On a brisk autumn morning in 331 BC, a small band of Greek warriors was preparing for battle. Their enemy, the Persian Empire, the most powerful nation on earth. The Greek army was tired, homesick, and outnumbered 5-1. But their 26-year-old leader, Alexander, wasn't about to let them give up. He was on a mission to conquer the world. Some would say Alexander was born for greatness. For starters, he was the son of a great king. His father, Philip II, ruled Macedonia, a kingdom north of Greece. In the 4th century BC, Philip conquered Greece and united Greece's independent city-states under one rule. King Philip wanted his son to rule an empire, but he knew a leader needed brains as well as brawn. So the king brought in the celebrated philosopher Aristotle from Athens to teach Alexander how to observe, reason, and think ahead. His lessons would make Alexander the first great strategist in military history. Greek mythology also played a crucial role in Alexander's education. Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, told the story of Achilles, a Greek warrior during the Trojan War. Alexander carried a copy of the Iliad with him for the rest of his life. Achilles, brave, fearless, and good, was his role model and hero. Alexander's chance to rule came sooner than he expected. He became king in 336 BC, when he was just 21 years old, after his father was assassinated. As the new king, Alexander made a promise to all of Greece. If they would band together and provide him with soldiers, ships, and supplies, he would conquer Persia, their hated enemy. In 334 BC, with an army of 45,000 men, Alexander began his historic crusade. Once he crossed into Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, he would never set foot in his homeland again. Darius III, Emperor of Persia, was waiting for Alexander in Anatolia with an army of 100,000 men. Alexander's army was outnumbered 2-1, but he had a plan. He organized his troops into a fighting formation called a phalanx. Tightly knit blocks of foot soldiers created a deadly wall of spikes with their lances. Trapped from behind by their own men, row after row of Persians were speared. Fearing defeat, Darius deserted his army and fled. At the age of 23, Alexander had driven the Persians out of the entire Mediterranean region, but he still wasn't satisfied. Alexander traveled 500 miles along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea to Egypt. Egypt, a world power for 2,000 years, had fallen under the harsh rule of Persia. Because of this, the Egyptians welcomed Alexander as a savior. In 331 BC at Memphis, Egypt's capital, Alexander was proclaimed pharaoh. His empire now covered nearly 500,000 square miles. Eager to spread Greek learning and culture throughout the known world, Alexander built a great city in Egypt at the mouth of the Nile River. As in Greece, the streets were laid out on a grid. Theaters, stadiums, temples, and assembly halls were built as monuments to his homeland. He called it Alexandria. Over the next few years, he would build a dozen more like it throughout the Middle East. Each of them was a miniature Greece transplanted to foreign soil. Meanwhile, back in Persia, King Darius was desperate for a way to stop Alexander. This time, King Darius summoned all his troops, a vast imperial army of 300,000 men. And so the brisk autumn morning of 331 BC arrived. The two armies collided at a place called Gorgamila. When rumors spread of the size of the Persian army, panic swept through the Greek camp. This time, they were outnumbered 5 to 1. After 3 years and 2,000 miles, they thought Alexander had led them to certain death. On September 20th, 331 BC, Alexander's forces marched against the full might of the Persian Empire. The decisive confrontation was at hand. Darius relied on strength. Alexander relied on strategy. Alexander believed the weakness of the Persians was Darius's lack of courage. He ordered his troops to turn and charge straight at Darius. The Persian leader once again lost his nerve and fled. Abandoned by their king, the Persians could find no reason to continue fighting. The victory belonged to Alexander. By the age of 25, Alexander had defeated the largest and most powerful empire of its time and been proclaimed king of Macedonia, Greece, Palestine, Egypt, and Asia. But for Alexander, there were still lands to conquer. Pushing farther east, he went where no Greek had ever gone before, into Afghanistan and India. He built 10 cities throughout Persia, Afghanistan, Turkestan, and India. In each, he left generals from his army in charge, planting seeds of Greek civilization thousands of miles from Greece. From Athens to India, Alexander had become a hero of mythic proportions. Alexander, though, proved to be all too human. The man who had survived countless life-threatening battle wounds was finally struck down by a mosquito, which carried the disease malaria. Alexander died on June 10th, 323 BC. After 13 years of fighting, he had conquered 2 million square miles and never lost a battle. Without him, his empire began to crumble, torn apart by the squabbling of rival generals and petty kings. But by spreading Greek culture throughout his empire, Alexander the Great left a legacy that still exists today in government, religion, art, and architecture.